Hello everyone, many thanks for joining us today. I am Warren Butler, Head of Marketing at Preact. In recent months, we've hosted a series of webinars with the aim of helping Microsoft Dynamics 365 and CRM customers prepare for the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, coming into force. In this session, we'll be looking at the critical needs to demonstrate compliance with GDPR and how this can be accomplished within Dynamics. The recent release of Microsoft's Compliance Manager gives administrators a new tool to help meet the compliance requirements of GDPR as well as ISO standards. For customers of Dynamics 365, Office 365 and other cloud services, this covers the controls that Microsoft applies as a cloud service provider and how these have been verified by third-party auditors. As GDPR compliance is a shared responsibility, it also details custom controls which administrators are responsible for managing. This then rolls up scores across multiple controls to make an overall compliance assessment. Microsoft will be building on its Compliance Manager and it's making further updates to address the requirements of GDPR as part of its Spring 18 release. To find out more about what Microsoft is doing and to access its GDPR resources, including white papers, videos, and FAQs, we recommend taking a look at its Trust Center site, and you can catch the URL on the screen now. Beyond what Microsoft is doing to help organizations demonstrate GDPR compliance, there's also a need to demonstrate compliance on a more granular level across individual contact records. That's why I'm delighted to welcome back Matt Beard and Rich Davis from the data management experts Data8, who join us to demonstrate their new provenance solution. In our earlier presentations, Data8 has shared insights about GDPR and their recommendations for improving CRM data quality, including their duplicate solution, which deals with duplicate records. One of the biggest takeaways that we found from our own GDPR research and training is the importance of not just being compliant with GDPR, but being transparent in demonstrating this. As Matt and Rich will shortly demonstrate, Data8's new provenance solution provides the controls and reporting to aid organizations in achieving this within Dynamics 365 by tackling three compliance areas. Firstly, by defining which lawful basis is being used to process personal data on a record. For example, you may need to use several forms of legal basis for different types of contact. You may be using consents as one example, but in other instances, you may need contractual or legal interests as the lawful basis. The right to erasure, also known as the right to be forgotten, is another key part of GDPR, which has attracted a lot of attention. But this throws up added challenges. For example, if an individual exercises these rights, how much data should be deleted and what should happen if that individual contacts you again? Finally, if consent is to be used as the lawful basis for processing, how can you prove this instruction was given? We've previously shared examples of how this can be tracked using integrated email marketing with a double opt-in process. But what about verbal consents and other examples of how that can be tracked in Dynamics? Data8's provenance solution is designed to address these compliance requirements. So that's a good time for me to hand over the presentation to Matt and Rich. Thanks, guys.
Hi, Warren. How are you doing? Thanks very much for introduction. So, as Warren said, we've got three main areas of provenance, which is the tracking of legal basis, the right to be forgotten, and tracking consent. The initial part we'll be looking at is the right to be forgotten. So this is from the ICO, and this is their checklist for what they believe should be done. So the key parts of this is obviously, are you relying on consent? Are you relying on legitimate interest? It doesn't really make a difference for the right to be forgotten. However, there are these exemptions, and these can be put through for a number of reasons. I won't go through all of them because they're all on the website and all the slides will be given out at the end. But the key ones to me are the obligation, the freedom of expression. Also, a key area for this is the ICO's checklist and preparing for that. So these are very much more governance issues, and what we're going to be looking at today is how to put them in place and the actual the way you can do that using provenance. So you can take these governance issues and actually enforce them using provenance. A key area for this is the having appropriate methods in place, and that's what provenance will allow you to have. Microsoft has given us numerous bits of advice for GDPR, and the key bit they've given for CRM and Dynamics is to delete the record. Now, we've looked at this in numerous ways and go, is deletion really the right answer? And we've come up with the idea actually it's not, because you need to make sure that you're not going to be contacting these people again, and you're going to be managing it in a way that's easy for you to do. So we've gone further on this and said, how do you identify them if they've been imported by lists? Do you delete important information such as opportunities, quotes, and anything that's needed for legislation or taxation reasons? Further to this, how do you ensure that you're not contacting somebody who's been erased or somebody has come back to you? So somebody's come through a website and put their information through. How do you identify that actually you've seen them before, you've erased them before, but now you've seen them again, and do you have consent to contact that person because you've erased them previously? And it's allowing you to put that governance in place. I'll pass you over to Matt, and Matt is going to run you through the demo of the erasure.
Thanks, Rich. Yeah, I'm sure we've read enough theory on GDPR for now, so it's nice to actually go into a CRM system and let's see it in use. So if I just jump out of PowerPoint in a second, and I'm on an on-premise instance here. It's a demo instance, so it's not real data. Bonus points if anyone can notice the link between all the example data. So the first thing we're going to talk about really is this right for erasure or right to be forgotten. So straight away we'll dive in, and let's say that I've got an example record here that I know exists called Mr. GDPR Erasure. So this is a person that exists already within my system, and like people are going to do when GDPR comes into play, they're going to want to invoke their right. So our system is pre-configured here. I will go through configuration later on just to give you some brief ideas. But the basic idea of it is that you can configure it to be able to delete certain bits of information, you can unlink them, or you can do a variety of operations. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to invoke this guy's right to erasure. So if I press deactivate, you can now see that I've got a brand new deactivation reason. In this case, it's GDPR erasure. So when you use this GDPR erasure status, very specific things happen behind the scenes. So as soon as I press deactivate, if you watch the screen, you'll notice that I've lost my information. Now, bear in mind, ignore that. If I refresh this, just to prove I'm not lying, this is just a hangover from the way CRM likes to show that on the page. So this is that same record now, and the right to erasure has been invoked. You'll notice the name disappeared, the email disappeared. I am doing air quotes. Now, we've done certain things behind the scenes that I'll explain shortly. And any other sort of linked records and everything like that has all been configured in a way that nothing identifiable is now remaining in the system. Now, hold the thoughts on the configuration and let me carry on, and then we'll go full circle towards the end. So after we've done this, we've moved on. We forgot about this right to erase has been invoked, and now we take a call again for a second time. So I'm just going to make a new contact in the system. So same details for the same person that I know works for this company. Now, this system, Warren mentioned earlier, uses our sister product called Duplicate. So you'll see certain things in this that you might wonder where it's coming from. So sort of the advanced duplicate detection and the merging is actually using our sister product. So I'll make sure to tell you where this is and when it comes up. So I type the email address out. So I've been given this prompt, in its current state, this record could be duplicate with one record. Now that is actually our duplicate tool telling you that warning. This doesn't require duplicate, this would still work without. They more just benefit each other, so it's easier for purposes of a demo. So when I save the record now, you'll see the window that CRM shows you, which is duplicate detected. So who is this duplicate we found? So this is the record I'm on right now, which is the Mr. GDPR with all these bits of information. And the duplicate we found is this record, which is the record that I modified a minute ago, with no full name, no email address, no phone. So realistically, there's no identifiable information. Yet somehow we've managed to find a duplicate, so this person is still within the system. Now, what we've actually done behind the scenes is you can configure certain pieces of information to become hashed. So what that means is you can take something readable, say an email address, and convert it into a non-human readable string of characters. That the second time you do that would create the same string, so you can then start looking for patterns in those. But that's one way. So once you've been given the one-way hash, you're able to go back the other way and decrypt their email address. So it's a safe and secure way of keeping unique information, but making sure it's not identifiable. So what I'll do quickly just to end this little bit here. So if I cancel out of that and I press merge, again, I've got block, excuse me, let me enable pop-ups and try again. So I'm now using the duplicate merge system again, which enables me to merge records before they're actually made. So you can see here that what I'm now going to do is I'm now going to reactivate the old lead with the details back in. So I'm going to merge that through, and it's going to redirect me back. So this is now the original record we started with. If your system was configured, for example, say invoices, it's difficult to delete invoices on a deletion. So you may have invoices that pointed to this blank inactive record. Now this record has been resurrected essentially with information. You've now got that trail again. So you know that this person came back, that has been gone for months. You now have their history again. Briefly show you configuration. I won't go through this too much because no one likes configuration. What you can see here is I've configured for contact, and just give this page a little minute to load on my slow Wi-Fi connection. There we go. So I'm now configured on a first name, I would clear this field. Last name, I would clear this field. Email, I would hash it. I need somewhere to store it. That's just a bit of trivial setup. But you can see the idea is that you can work through all of these fields as you want to, and you can decide what you want to keep, what you want to hash. And that is the GDPR erasure within Dynamics. So I'll just hand back over to Rich.
So the second part of this demo is tracking for legal basis processing and tracking for consent. So the consent checklist with ICO is pretty in-depth, and realistically it's going to give you a lot to think about on how you manage your data. So have you got the most appropriate consent? Have you asked for consent on numerous bases? Have you told them where you're going to use the data and why? There is a depth of information that you need to hold, which actually Dynamics in its current format doesn't allow you to do so. It has a rolled-up version of allows and do not allows, whereas the tool we're about to show you gives you much more insight into how you can hold that data and give you options of opt-in and opt-out and manage and see that audit trail through. So this with our contact consent record, and it shows you a bit of information about who the data subject is, what consent you have, and where the consent has come from. An interesting part of that is all emails who had an opt-in. However, we've decided that I'm a bit tired of the monthly newsletter and I need that stopping. That can be linked up to your preference center. So when you're talking about send me an email once a month, send me an email twice a week, and you can decide which ones they are, it can roll down to this granular level. I'm going to pass back over to Matt now, who's going to show you this in action.
Yeah, so let's see in action instead. So there's sort of actually two parts within this demo I'm going to show you. The first one is the idea of managing the consent, and the second one is the idea of the processing grounds. They sort of all link together quite nicely, so we're sort of covering two of the three steps within this little part of the demo. Again, shouldn't take too long. It's a relatively small thing that is a complex thing that people just haven't managed to quite implement, and that, again, what we feel is that the recommendations by Microsoft, we understand why that's what they've said, but realistically on a day-to-day usage, they're not quite enough. Those 6 fields of do not email, do not book, allow is not quite as in detail enough as it probably should be for GDPR. So let's go straight to a record. Carrying on, I'm in the same sort of CRM instance, and I'm going to go to this person. So Mr. GDPR has all sorts of pseudonyms, so we've got a Mr. GDPR given at this point. So this is someone, again, exists in our system. He's in there for one reason or another. But basically what's happened is that we've had a phone call off him and we've verbally got some sort of consent. So before I go too far, one thing I will mention now is that this system has been set up already with the idea of consent statements and what you're consenting to. That is probably a whole nother webinar and a bit more complex. So if you bear thought on that one, and we've got documentation and videos on that sort of stuff anyway. So we'll just have to pretend that they're already in there. So because this is a demo system, I've got lots of buttons up here. So actually up here, I've got a consent. So I can now add or remove any consent for this person. So it's a nice, easy ribbon button that's designed for your day-to-day salesperson or user of CRM to be able to quickly manage consents. So you just click that little button, and it pops up and enables you to make a new consent. So this is a piece of consent given to a specific thing. This has been pre-filled in for you, so you don't need to worry about this. Consent given. Worth noting at this point that consent is bi-directional, so you can also withdraw consent if you wish. So in this case, we're giving consent. And to what statement? So what statement did somebody read out? So let's go newsletter only. Let's just click that just so you get an idea of what that is. I'll go redo that. So this is where you would store your consent statements. Again, I've made this stuff up already. I'm not going to go much further into it than this. But the idea of this consent statement is that this was a tick box on the website. They've ticked this box, therefore we have that piece of consent. So if I just remake that consent, sorry, I can now go consent given to newsletter only. This person's happy to receive my consent. And how did they consent? So that could have been website because that's where it came from. But alternatively, we could have had a slightly different approach and they could have done some other way of doing it, and it was some sort of verbal consent. And here, if I have a proof, so if I have, say, a saved phone call, if I have a saved email somewhere, I can start doing these clever things. I can start putting hard evidence in of where the consent was given as proof. So I can now save that record. So nothing changes on this record really. These will change if I refresh the page, but with this demo, I'm just going to not go with them for now. And down here, I've got an option for consents. So I can just start tracking people's consents and what they have and haven't done. So it was a new record. My grid's going to load slowly just to keep me on my toes. There we go. So this is just a link of all the consents that somebody's have. Somebody can have hundreds of consents in and out of various different levels. So this is what this is where that goes. Now, where am I going with that now? So what I'll do now is that he's consented to the newsletter and the day goes on. Now our marketing team have got hold of this, and our marketing team would like to send out the monthly newsletter. Their general way of doing that is maybe some sort of marketing automation tool using a marketing list, for example. That seems to be a fairly common way that people do these things. So I'm just going to jump into a marketing list. And again, in Blue Peter fashion, I'm configured up already with a marketing list here that's got, when it loads, 4 members in it, the one I've just done, and a couple of others. Now, just to move slightly sideways onto the idea of the data processing grounds and how you process your data, this is where this will come in. So alongside a marketing list, what you have to do is you have to provide some sort of grounds on how this marketing list is going to process. So you can see here, again, I've got one pre-configured. So if I just click on that, it's fairly basic. Doesn't need to be much, just needs to be enough that if somebody comes and asks questions, you can say, I took these decisions and this is why I'm allowed to market to these people. So the ground for this example is that I am using consent. If I am using consent, what specific consent thing do I need to have at minimum to be able to receive the emails? So it's worth noting at this point, this could be some sort of hierarchy structure. So you might have an all-encompassing all marketing emails and then broken down by a monthly newsletter. So basically, you have to go for the most granular piece of consent needed, and the system will handle itself with its parents. You also don't have to just go with consent. you've got a couple of options there. You've got legitimate interest, public interest, and all the other sort of grounds that you could possibly process on. So if you're going with public interest or vital interest, you don't need a piece of consent because you've determined that you've done some sort of privacy impact assessment to determine that they are the most, this is the reason I'm using this, and I'm safe to market to all those people. In this case, I'll stay with consent and just flick back to my marketing list. Now, how does this all link together? Now, I'm logged in as me on the system, and I'm a sysadmin. I can do anything I want in the system. I can see everything, and I can destroy all if I want to. You might have some users in your system that will obviously have a bit more lockdown rights. So maybe it's just somebody in your marketing department, or maybe it's even, say, a user that your marketing automation tool uses. So Click Dimensions, as an example that I can say we do use internally, is that it has it uses a user. That's how it processes all its stuff. So I've got an in-private version of Serum here. So this is the exact same instance. The URL is slightly different, just so I can log in as somebody else. But if we look under here, I think you can see this. So I'm logged in as a Click Dimensions user instead. So this is a user with a lot less permissions than I've got. And basically, what we can do is we can set users up in the system to not be able to see things they shouldn't be able to see. So what I mean by that is if I jump into, say, marketing list, so there's only one marketing list in the whole system. So you'll now see, once this loads, this is the exact same marketing list. I can only see 2 people. So just to flick between the screens so you can see where I'm at. This is the exact same list. This one has 4. This one has 2. So how can there only be 2 in this list, but there's really 4? And how is that working? So if I just go back into my system and I just take a look at Mr. GDPR withdrawn, who we can see is here and isn't here. So let's take a look at him. So I jump into him. If I go and take a look at his consents, let's look at the history, we can see that he did opt in. So there's obviously a reason at some point why he's in that list. Maybe they added everyone. But he very specifically, by email on the 8th of January, withdrew that consent. So he now doesn't want to receive that. So what this system has done is this system has determined that the Click Dimensions user must adhere to all pieces of consent in the system. And sort of as a fail-safe is probably the best way of saying it, is that the system acts as if that user can never even see that record. So there will be no accidental emailing to that person. There'll be no GDPR non-compliance by mistake. So that is why that system is designed to act as some sort of fail-safe and not see the records. But they are there. They will always exist in there. And that can be configured at by user level. So you can have your IT guys can see everyone, or your marketing people can only see people they're allowed to see. But this person can still see it. It's worth adding at this point. So if I jump into contacts, no, leads, wrong entity type, nearly. Still exists, still there. So it's only in the what's the word I'm thinking of, context of the marketing list is where that lead is not seen. So hopefully it can be confusing. I'm sure you've spent a long time with GDPR and consent and you can understand how confusing it can get. But that is it in a quick 10-minute nutshell. So if I give back over to Rich again.
So we've touched on a couple of times how it works with its sister product Duplicate. The idea is that a key part of your data governance strategy is data quality, and Duplicate is a key part of that. So what we've done is we've obviously taken out the top level information of do not allow emails, telephones, and postal. However, we've now taken that bit further and said, well, what's the granularity of that email? We have newsletters, we have event emails, we have educational, and we've now got 2 duplicate records with different opt-in statements and opt-out statements. With Duplicate, what will happen is when we merge those 2 records together, that information will roll up into one and be able to choose the most recent statement. This will happen in batch, it will happen in real time, and it will really help with that data governance issue that is created by poor data. We've got some user resources up, so obviously Warren's touched upon the trusted documents of Microsoft.
Yeah, so just to interrupt from Rich, because we'll talk about this one because I'm proud that I spent a long time reading these very long documents. So So the Microsoft Trust document is an interesting one, and it is literally step by step within GDPR how they recommend you solve certain problems. So, like I say, the right to erasure their recommendation is to just delete the record, which we've seen is not really feasible. So that's an interesting one to read. It's hard to stomach sometimes, but it's very in depth, and it's exactly how Microsoft can say they're going to be. They help you be GDPR compliant with Dynamics CRM. The GDPR assessment tool is sort of in line with the compliance manager that Warren spoke about earlier. The ICO guidelines are the stuff that Rich used as a reference before. Again, you need to be in the right frame of mind to read it, but they're absolutely worth the read, and they will really help you understand where you need to go with it.
We touched upon the checklist, and the checklists are very great for kind of that building of governance. It really will help you utilize stuff like provenance in the best way possible, because it will give you those guidelines and saying, well, actually, this is the kind of consent statement I need to add in. Obviously, we've got our own blog where we talk about GDPR. Preact does some absolutely fantastic information on GDPR, and we are also a member of a forum called CRM-UG, which talks about a myriad of factors on the CRM. And if you've got any questions on GDPR or anything like that, then it's a great place to go to find out information. The costs of it are £3,000 as a one-off. It's an installation fee, and we'll help you with that. If you decide to go with duplicate, then we do a 50% offer, and if you're above 50 users, it's price on request and we'll discuss it. We have a free 2-week trial, so you can use it, understand it, and see if it works for you. And yeah, it's a one-off thing. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, guys.
Back to one question.
Superb. Yeah, thank you, guys. Yeah, I hope you found that beneficial, just to understand how Dynamics 365 can be used to take some of the complexity out of GDPR compliance. Please do get in touch if you would like to arrange a free trial of the provenance solution that the guys have just demonstrated, or if you want to discuss any aspects of that. We've recorded this presentation, and you'll get an email with a link to that within the next couple of days. And we're going to pause for a moment just to look at the questions that have come through. But if you're leaving us at this point, many thanks again for joining us today.